We're going to do this very quickly and very quietly because we're hiding from a baby who is taking a nap. Today, we're going to talk about Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. And we're doing it like this because I cannot make my computer work correctly. It's this book. It's a wonderful book. It is my daughter's favorite book. So when I asked my daughter what book by a woman I should talk about, she said, Judy Blume! And at first I was like, no. This is an adult class. We're talking about adult things. And she stared at me like I had grown two heads. And I realized, as we were talking about the book, that we are way too quick to minimize the ideas, the feelings, the growth process of children, and we're way too quick to write off the authors that write for younger audiences as simply not being intelligent enough or driven enough or sophisticated enough to write for adults. And there's a little bit of ageism, I guess would be the right word for it, in the writing industry, which is kind of interesting to think about because as much as there is this idea in our class, at least, that we should value the contributions of women, we should also value the contributions of literature as a whole, regardless of who it's directed towards. You can write a really good book that's written for someone younger to read. So that's why I picked this particular book. My summary, my PowerPoint summary, which is very, very brief. This is a book about everything that young girls worry about: their periods, their boobs, their crushes, their parents, and their place in the world that seems to minimize all of their concerns. Margaret is a young girl who has just turned 12. She is on the cusp of, in her mind, learning everything she needs to know about life. Part of this includes the idea that now that she's 12, she doesn't have to wear socks anymore because socks are a kid thing. She's excited to get her period. She's excited to get a bra. She's excited to kiss her first boy. She's excited about all of these things. And she just can't wait to figure out what it's all about. And of course, as most people who have turned 12 know, you get to the end of year 12 and you've got a whole other list of things that you now think that you have to know and experience in order to be an adult. You never quite get there. But Margaret does learn a lot over the course of the book. And she grows up a lot, and it's really an interesting journey to watch her go on, especially since one of the things that she thinks that she needs to learn about is God. Margaret grew up without any religion. Her mother and father, one is Jewish, one is Christian. They both left their respective faiths to start a family together and decided that it would be up to Margaret to decide once she was old enough what God she wanted to pray to, the Jewish God or the Christian God. Margaret grew up wanting to have faith, so she prays to a God, but she doesn't know which religion he's from, and one of the things that she thinks that she needs to learn in order to be an adult or be grown up is which God it is she's praying to. And so one of the things that the book follows her on is this journey to try to figure out who in the world she's talking to when she prays at night. So your cast of characters, you have Margaret, you have her group of friends. They wanting to be cool and make a club. They call themselves the Preteen Sensations. You have Margaret's parents. You have Laura, who is that girl in school. We all had one of those girls in our schools that matured before anyone else did. Had breasts, got tall, started to look more grown up than everyone else. And this character in this book, like most of those girls in our own school, is kind of ridiculed for that. She is accused of having sex with older boys and things like that, not because she actually does any of those things, but because she looks older, and so people just wrongly assume that she's doing things that you just get the idea in your head that older girls do, like she's sexually experienced even though she isn't. And then you have Miles J. Benedict Jr. He is Margaret's teacher. He has a pretentious name, and he is a bit pretentious, but he's trying to do the right thing by his students, and so he gives them an assignment to study something, anything, over the course of the year and write about your experiences while you're learning about this topic. So, of course, Margaret naturally picks God as her topic of study. And then you have Moose Freed, who is the friend of one of Margaret's neighbors and a boy that she has a bit of a crush on, but also really hates because, of course, that's how these things work. And then you have God, because God is actually a character in the book in a way because of Margaret's relationship to him, not just as an ideal, but as a person who she talks to, even if it's just, he's not physically present, but he is present in a way because Margaret is trying so desperately to sense his presence when she speaks to him. And then you have your themes. You have puberty. You have religion. You have a feeling of belonging. Margaret doesn't know where she belongs because she doesn't really know what she believes. And then you have belief. Not just belief in God, but in belief in yourself, belief in what other people say, belief in what you perceive to be real, belief in what is actually real. Margaret is studying with belief, and all of these are struggling with belief in all of these realms because she doesn't really believe in herself. She doesn't really believe that she's going to even hit puberty. She believes that maybe she's broken in some way. She wants God to help her, and she doesn't believe that she can help herself. And this kind of struggle with the idea of who you can believe, what you can believe, why you can believe, colors all of the interactions in the book. So things you should know about Judy Blume. She was born in 1938 in New Jersey to Jewish parents. She started writing during her first marriage when her children were school-aged, more or less as a way to pass time. And her first book was published in that period of time in 1969. She's still writing and speaking today, which is really, really cool because while her, the 10 books that she wrote, which are kind of perceived as the most important or the most essential Judy Blume books, were published in the 70s and early 80s, but she hasn't stopped writing and she hasn't stopped speaking. And she's still kind of struggling with writing about the same topics, belonging, belief, friendship, what it means to be a young girl in society. And all of those things still matter, and readers still really care about them. So I already talked some about why I picked this book, but I want to talk a little bit more because when you mention the book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, a lot of people, the first thing they remember is this kind of silly scene where the girls are doing this little chest exercise saying, I must increase my bust. It's a bit of a joke. And the fact that the author talks matter-of-factly about breasts, about growing breasts, about being embarrassed about them, talks about menstruation in very, very straightforward language, talks about things like pads and tampons and things like that. The book has actually been challenged in a lot of schools for being, what's a good way to say it? For being too blunt, for being too direct, for being inappropriate for some girls to read because of these topics, which kind of makes me smirk, because why would it be inappropriate for girls to read about something they're about to experience? And on the other hand, it's also often minimized as being a book about nothing. I've actually heard people say, "What's the actual story there?" And that fascinates me, because why would you minimize a book that is about things that all girls experience and all girls worry about as being a book about nothing? Like I said, it's my 11-year-old daughter's favorite book, and she is starting to struggle with all of the things that Margaret struggled with. When will she menstruate? What will it be like? When will she actually need a bra? Will she be grown up when those happen? Who should she believe in? Should she believe in the same God as her family, or does she want to go somewhere else? All of these things are things that she struggles with, and so for her it's very, very meaningful to be able to read about someone else who is struggling with those same things. And to kind of carry on with that idea, you have a lot of books that are out there that are books about young men struggling with being on the cusp of puberty as well. And, books like Shiloh, books like Where the Red Fern Grows, there are a lot of books out there that are really, in the same sense, there are books about a boy and a dog, or books about a boy and his young female friend, and really the storyline is, this young boy getting to a moment of self-realization and learning to grow up. And those books are not dismissed in the same way. They're seen as being more literary, and it's sort of a pet peeve of mine. Why is it more meaningful to write about things that boys experience than to write about things that girls experience, and to write off the things that girls experience as gross because they have to do with breasts and menstruation? I'm not quite sure where that bias comes in, and why people don't realize how blatant it is. I don't think it's any more navel-gazing to talk about if your boobs are ever going to be big and luscious and wonderful, any more than it would be to talk about when is my facial hair going to grow. If you have an entire book where a guy just wants his facial hair to grow, and maybe a couple other things happen to him, I don't see how that is any more literary or any more important than a girl wondering about how her body is going to mature. But yet again, Judy Blume's book has been challenged on school reading lists because it's seen as tawdry. I'm sure the first time that happened, the whole sorry not sorry meme didn't exist because the internet didn't really exist then, but I think that would be a perfect time for someone just to go, sorry not sorry. So that is this book. And I encourage everyone that has young girls to get it for their girls, and I encourage everyone that, just to take the time to read it if you can. It's a pretty quick read. I read it in about 4 hours because it's not a terribly long book, but there's a lot of stuff in there. Every time you read it, you kind of discover just a little bit more that the author kind of threw in, and it's really, really interesting. So, thank you all for your time, and I didn't hear a baby scream the entire recording, so that's really exciting. Yay!